Okay, so this is the second lecture in the Global Issues lecture series. But let me start and giving you two contexts, the context that situate this presentation. The first context is, of course, this globalization and this discontent. And one interesting aspect about globalization is, although we talk a lot about economic aspect, technological aspect, and the movement and migration of humans, but there's another aspect I find very interesting, that is the forms and the engagement of military conflicts and the wars. And we understand that, especially in the 20th century, that this First and Second World War have brought significant impact on the current condition where we are living. And the second part related to globalization is following the Arjuna Padre's work, that he talks about different spheres or the scapes of intercultural engagement or global engagement. He talked about technological scape and economic scape and ideoscape and mediascape and others. But I find somewhat similar to his discussion of ideoscape is this idea of memory scape, that how memory in a way provides a sense of community and identity, and especially in the contemporary era. So that's the first context to situate this presentation. And second context is actually our much longer and bigger project that I have been doing with my colleague Min-Hwa Han on its war and memory and recounting collective memories of historical justice and reconciliation. So this book project is about different historical justice and recollection and reconciliation issue, talking about comfort woman issues and forced labor issue and the Yasukuni issue, Yasukuni Shrine issue. And today's topic is more specifically focused on the matters and the concerns on the Yasukuni Shrine. First, historical context. The Samuel Locklear III, the commander of U.S. Pacific Command, warned that there is a growing risk in the region, the possibility of military conflict. And at the 2014, the Economic Forum, World Economic Forum in Davos, that the Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, commented that today's rising concern and conflict is somewhat similar to the eve of World War I. And of course, this kind of caused a lot of global tension and as well as tension. But when you look at this rising tension in Northeast Asia, it often takes two forms. One is over territory disputes, and the other over history disputes. And when we look at the territory disputes, we can look at the conflicts over Senkaku and Daioyu Island between Japan and China, and Dokdo and Takeshima between Korea and Japan, and 4 islands within the Kuril Islands between Russia and Japan. But at the same time, a lot of these conflicts have deeper historical roots and often coincide with the region's development in the nation state as well as post-colonial development. And what we find here is often competing interpretations, especially about the cause of the conflict, who caused what and which action brought others' reactions. But what's interesting here is their similar resolution or an important key to the resolution, that is escalating and demonstrating their military power as an important key to the solution. And ultimately, by invoking their sense of nationalism and this military power, to invoke this discourse of to defend our territory, our sovereignty, and our freedom. So in the middle of this volatile situation, Prime Minister Abe's visit to Yasukuni Shrine brought an intense concern. And what Professor Takahashi from Japan, called that as a pouring even more fuel on the fire. So some of you may be familiar with the issue concerning Yasukuni Shrine, but for others, probably not. But to follow New York Times travel guide, Yasukuni Shrine is introduced in this way. Built in 1869 to commemorate Japanese War Dead, Yasukuni Shrine is constructed in classic Shinto style with a huge steel torii gate at its entrance. During times of war, soldiers were told that if they died fighting for their country, their spirits would find glory here. Even today, it's believed that the spirits of some 2.4 million Japanese war dead are at home here, where they are worshipped as deities. During any day of the week, you are likely to encounter older Japanese paying their respect to friends and families who perished in World War II. So I tried to look up some YouTube images to introduce you, and actually I had a difficult time to find an appropriate material because a lot of these materials on Yasukuni Shrine have very strong and vivid political perspective. So even before, of course, this project talked about some political dimension as well, but before we get there, I want to give you a little bit of rather imagery representation of Yasukuni Shrine. If the internet opens up. This gave a little glimpse of Yasukuni Shrine and its appearance and also its natural friendly nature of the Yasukuni Shrine, as well as other facilities and its cultural events. Although this New York Times travel guide introduces Yasukuni Shrine in a rather neutral tone, but the description misses some controversial points. The first, the 2.4 million Japanese spirits include former colonial subjects, the people who were colonized then from Korea and from Taiwan. Second, some of the spirits at home are actually against the wishes of their families. And three, some are forcibly enshrined even when they are still alive. And four, died fighting for the country meant, rhetorically, more died fighting for the emperor. And the fifth, the war dead and warship includes 14 Class A war criminals. The Class A war criminals are people who committed and convicted as committing crimes against peace, people who primarily planned and waged World War II. Not surprisingly, upon Abe's visit to Yasukuni Shrine, there were intense criticisms and against his visit, because mainly from Korea and Japan, Abe's visit meant as a strong indignation to such a blatant challenge against historical justice and human conscience. In their opposing view, Yasukuni Shrine stands as a symbol of Japan's refusal to atone, and Japan's lack of remorse for its wartime deeds, and Japan's main spiritual pillar for the aggressive wars that Japanese militarism committed. Therefore, visiting Yasukuni Shrine indicates condoning Japan's nationalistic and militaristic past, and Japanese leaders' denial of historical responsibility of colonial ruling in Asia. Now, upon facing these criticisms, defenders of Yasukuni Shrine seemed dismissive or confused by their overreactions on the domestic matters. So, such as Abe mentioned once, that there is a criticism based on misunderstanding that Yasukuni Shrine commemorates so-called war criminals. And he defines his visit as his natural expression to pay respect and reverence to the souls who sacrificed their precious lives for Japan. And another prime minister who frequently visited Yasukuni Shrine, Koizumi, also defined his visit as a natural expression to appreciate that Japan's peace and prosperity today is established on the basis of their sacrifice. Usually, these defenders of Yasukuni Shrine, such as strong advocates such as Koizumi, Abe, and Nakasone, seem to rely on two rhetorical grounds to justify their visit. The first one has to do with the universal ground. That is, Nakasone once mentioned that the U.S. has the Arlington National Cemetery, and the USSR, former Russia, has the Tomb of Unknown Soldier. It is natural to have a site of commemoration for the nation to pay gratefulness to the people who died for the country. Otherwise, who would sacrifice themselves for the country? But at other times, they seem to rely on rather particular or relativistic stance. That is, Koizumi once mentioned that regarding ways of commemorating the dead and other countries saying, because it is different from our thought, therefore it is bad, I'm doubtful whether it is right to say, yes, is that so, and to follow them. And Abe once mentioned that rather somewhat mixture of relativistic as well as universal ground. That is, we cannot and will not allow Japan's freedom of religion and freedom of conscience and our feeling in memory of the war dead to be violated in such a manner. Our claim to respond to Abe, Koizumi, and Nakasone is that Yasukuni Shrine is a powerful rhetorical institution that provides material and discursive ground to frame and enact rhetoric of militant nationalism and banal patriotism, calling for the defense of our faith against their aggression, and effectively eliminates any space of ethical and moral questioning. Particularly, the profound rhetorical power of Yasukuni Shrine relies on, first, by fusing natural feelings of individual grief and cultural tradition of commemoration with the national heritage of banal patriotism. And second, by offering a particular interpretation and the meaning to the death and the life of the lost, such as every war is a self-defense, therefore just, and every patriot is selfless, therefore noble. To advance our project, we have done some literature reviews, primarily around three areas of studies. One is collective memory studies, and the performance studies, and the feminist standpoint theory. And with the collective memory studies and the performance studies, we like to highlight the nature of embodiedness and the situateness of memory. And ultimately, what this leads to is to articulation of standpoint, and even further to articulate a critical stance that effectively demystifies and deconstructs the rhetoric of Yasukuni Shrine, and further to advocate an ethical and moral stance to understand historical justice and truth. And the way we define critical standpoint here is an achievement and commitment from political and theoretical struggle against all forms of oppression. And specifically, this is the actual layout and the structure of Yasukuni Shrine. And the shrine itself is founded approximately about 6.5 hectare ground plus 4 hectare of causeway with several buildings, facilities, and monuments. And if you access through the east gate, then you'll first see the first shrine gate, and you pass through the second gate and third gate, eventually to get to the main hall and the main shrine. The main hall is open to the public, but main shrine is closed to the public. At the same time, throughout the Yasukuni Shrine, there are several monuments and statues. And you're first to see the statue of Omura Masujiro. He was the founder of modern Japanese army and the chief executive of military department in Meiji period. And then you'll see somewhere here, the monument of Justice Radha Vinod Pal. He was the lone Indian judge and justice in the International Military Tribunal on for the Far East, who founded the Japanese war criminals not guilty. And you also see the statue of kamikaze pilot, and you'll see the statues of horses, pigeons, dogs killed in war service, and the statue of war widow with children. Most of these statues and the monuments, especially the human shapes, are approximately similar to human size, in a way to offer ways to identify with these human bodies and the human faces. Although the statue of Omura Masujiro was actually elevated much higher with its founding pillar, so that it naturally invokes sense of respect and higher status. In addition to this shrine, there's an important facility. It's called the Yushukan. It's the military museum. And as soon as you enter this Yushukan, you see a combat plane and military use locomotive in the entrance hall. But this is one of the biggest military museum that has about 55,000 war-related items with the 15 exhibition rooms, including special exhibition of suicide weapons. It reads, next to human torpedoes, kamikaze suicide airplanes, and mufflers with blood stains, there is an epitaph stating that 6,000 people heroically passed away for the country with these suicide weapons. The nature of Yasukuni Shrine, especially its political nature, become more apparent when we follow the historical development of Yasukuni Shrine. Yasukuni Shrine was first built in 1869 as a Tokyo shokonsha. It means the shrine that calls in spirit, and later renamed as a Yasukuni Shrine in 1879. It was approximately the same era of the Meiji Reform from 1868. It was a time when a new imperial nation state was forming from the previous shogunate Baku period. And it was a time that granted Yasukuni Shrine as the state Shinto shrine, and you see a merger between religion and nation state. And throughout until the end of World War II. In this shrine, the emperor is viewed as the deity, and all the citizens, including the colonized, are viewed as the descendants of the divine emperor. In this Yasukuni Shrine, it's as the national shrine throughout the period of Imperial Japan. Yasukuni Shrine became a place to honor, divinize, and worship the spirits of soldiers who honorably sacrificed their lives to the nation or on behalf of the emperor, including several wars since 1894. After Second World War, there came an intense debate about the nature of Yasukuni Shrine, and the debates surround around three areas. The first, the state's absolute power to enshrine everyone as deities, at times against the wills of the families, and also to include the colonized subjects as well as war criminals. The second debating point regards that how the state creates and dominates a national narrative of just war and honorable sacrifice to articulate its rhetoric of liberating Asia from the Western colonialism. Here, it meant more specifically the U.S. and the victims of unfortunate circumstances. And also you see a strong relationship between religion and state. Although recently, about 10 or 15 years ago, Osaka High Court found that the Koizumi's visit to Yasukuni Shrine was illegal against the Constitution that advocates separation between the state and politics and religion. Still, even today, you see more and more actually the increase in the politicians visiting Yasukuni Shrine. And last year, during the spring annual festival, there were about 168 political leaders visited Yasukuni Shrine. To talk more specifically about how Yasukuni Shrine constitutes its national identity and national narrative, it becomes more apparent when we look at its virtual website. And the virtual site has a similar layout, the structure, as the actual Yasukuni Shrine. It has sub-menus or sub-areas to visit, such as about Yasukuni Shrine, and the wheel, festivals, and the Yushukan. As soon as you visit this homepage of Yasukuni Shrine, you'll see a pop-up window with this poem written by Emperor Meiji. I assure those of you who fought and died for the country that your names will live forever at this shrine in Musashino. One of the important and also very difficult part to talk about Yasukuni Shrine is that it actually is from the real and individual experiences and feelings. You can actually hear the heartbreaking stories of the mothers and the children who have lost their family members during the war. And this is one of the letter written by a soldier. And I believe this shows how and why it's difficult to talk about and even criticize the politics of Yasukuni Shrine. My dear Yoshiko, Kyoko, Mitsuko, and Kazuyo, do not be sad that father is not with you. Father died an honorable death in a holy war. You do not know your father very well when he was alive in this world. Yoshiko and also Kyoko have so little an impression of me that they will eternally never remember me. Nevertheless, father has vivid impressions of your healthy and darling faces. When at my workplace, training place, and at the battlefront, I felt full of energy when your dear faces came to mind. Father has not the least apprehension, since all of you are in good health and have no physical defects. I can peacefully die in action. All children, grow up in peace. When you grow up, follow mother's wishes. Do not dishonor father and live courageously as a fine woman of Japan. May you sisters join together in harmony and protect your mother. When you miss father, go to Yasukuni Shrine, is what father also saw even in a movie. That's really what it is. Being honorable children of the deceased, they will allow you to meet me at the shrine. At the time, probably come to Kudar. This is all I have to say. Grow up soundly and properly. From father. And this is from the last messages of the month from October last year and 2013. And the latest message in March 2014 has this letter called, I will die with a smile on my faces as a blossom that protects the nation. Mother, thank you for looking after me for so long. For these 21 years, I brought you not a single happiness or peace of mind, but only worry. I'm very sorry about this. but being born as a son of Japan, I stand at the front line of the national defense and bloom as a man. I will die for the sake of the eternal peace of East Asia. This is the long-cherished desire of a son of Japan. Thinking about the fact that from the time of my enlistment, Mother was already resigned about my fate, I also have not a single regret, and I will die with a smile on my face as a blossom that protects the nation. Moreover, if my remains should return, I only ask that you say that I had died well for the nation, and I would be even happier if you praise me for my performance in battle. Just a small marker for my gravestone is fine. Therefore, please donate the rest of the money to the National Defense Fund. Shigeru-kun, be in good health. Become a fine sailor of the Imperial Navy. I pray for your success at sea. I pray from my grave that Takae works diligently, marries well, and leads a happy life. While I caused older brother and others much worry, Haru has somehow managed to become a full-fledged son of Japan. There is no greater joy for me. I ask that you will look after Mother and Haru Tsugu. As you can see, that the defenders of Yasukuni Shrine as well as opponents of Yasukuni Shrine often use this expression that as soon as they hear the criticism or the support of Yasukuni Shrine, they feel as if their blood runs against its stream. It's that visceral and emotion-invoking sentiment in both camps.
So these letters are, who's actually writing these letters?
The actual soldiers who left these letters before they went to war and before they went to the final
battle.
battle.
But why the date? Why the 2014 date then?
Based on these actual letters, the Yasukuni Shrine chose and picked as a letter of the month.
Oh, okay.
So a letter of the month appears from actually a few years back, and every month there will be different letters of the month. Based on this actual individual and real experiences and the feelings, Yasukuni Shrine turns this into a cultural tradition as well as a national heritage. So turning this real and individual grief into the patriotic zeal of heroic sacrifice, it is what the Professor Takahashi calls emotional alchemy, as epitome and universal and ordinary experience of the nation. In the website, especially the deities page, it says not only soldiers, but also women and schoolgirls. They're also enshrined ordinary Japanese citizens. Taiwanese and Korean people died as Japanese, and who were labeled war criminals and executed after having been tried by the Allies. All sacrificed their lives to the public duty of protecting their motherland. It also shows the rhetoric of the victims of unfortunate circumstances. On the page of Foundation, it says, Japan was in a time of Meiji restoration in order to be born as a modern unified state in a time of isolation. However, when the United States and other Western nations began to put pressure on Japan to open its doors to the world, Japan was thrown into turmoil. From the outbreak of an unavoidable and unfortunate conflict, precious lives were lost. And there is also rhetoric as a particular and relativistic practice, perhaps anticipating a criticism of the politics of Yasukuni Shrine. Japan still maintains the culture and tradition of respecting and worshipping the deceased as their guardian deities. Yasukuni Shrine is an example of which represents such genuine Japanese culture. Yasukuni Shrine is a place to commemorate in a manner of Shinto, a traditional Japanese faith, and a place for all the Japanese to show their appreciation and respect to those who died to protect their country. Therefore, the shrine has completely different nature from that of tombs where bodies or bones of fallen soldiers are buried. At the same time, this particular ground is mixed with the universal practice. On the worshipping page, the website states, the foreigners will understand the nature of Yasukuni Shrine comparing with similar facilities in their countries. to show their appreciation and respect to those who died to protect their mother country. The difference is that the shrine enshrines the spirits of those who died on public duty of protecting their motherland. The difference might be causing misunderstanding. However, it has its origin in the traditional Japanese way of thinking. It is not an abnormal institution. Probably people who cherish their own culture will understand the difference and will understand the importance of Yasukuni Shrine, which appreciates and respects those who dedicated their precious lives to their mother country. As much as the shrine itself is an important institution, and it's through its embodiment and emplacement within the site, but we also find that the embodiment and emplacement of Yushikan Museum is equally important. The Yushikan page states that Yushikan is a museum to inherit sincerity and records of enshrined divinities of Yasukuni Shrine by displaying their historically important wills and relics. Yushu, the name of this museum, means to associate with and to learn from high-principled people. Each article displayed in this museum is filled with wishes of predecessors who named this museum Yushikan and the sincerity of enshrined divinities who devoted themselves to build a peaceful nation. By touching directly the sincerity of the enshrined divinities who dedicated their precious lives for their loving motherland, hometowns and families, you may find something precious. So the reason why we find this museum is equally important to the shrine, or Shinto shrine, is that Shinto shrine on the one hand offers a reason or the look of cultural and ritual and religious practices. Therefore, it is kind of relativist, invoking today's multiculturalism. But on the other hand, the museum as an institution offers rather educational and archival nature. In other words, it is a historical institution that offers a factual and objective account of the history. And of course, as we talk about the rhetoricity of this emplacement and embodiment of facilities, that not every artifacts and not every evidences are presented. It's based on the inclusion and selection, and as well as exclusion and the silence. So many literatures about the museum studies and the cultural studies today talk about how ethnic heritage museums provide, in a way, an actual on-site experience that individuals identify their identity and their history vis-a-vis what is displayed. As our final response to the Yasukuni Shrine and its particularly relativistic and universal ground, this is our claim again. The problem of Yasukuni Shrine and its history view as national narrative and identity, on the one hand, it is its purposeful deafness to the voices and memories of other people. And the second, it's a strategic denial of moral, ethical reflexivity and empathy. And if you see the Abe's comment recently, it shows what and how they strategically utilizes this relativistic point of view. The definition of what constitutes an invasion has yet to be established in academia or in the international community. Things have happened between nations will look different depending on which side you view them from. So to respond to this rather kind of relativistic, depending on the national standpoint, as well as every country does it, here is one on our response to its particular and relativistic view. Regarding the national standpoint and national experience and ordinary experience and identity, we have pointed out earlier that not every enshrined Japanese are Japanese. These 2.4 million enshrined Japanese actually include the spirits of the colonized people from Korea and Taiwan. At the same time, not every Japanese who fought for the nation are enshrined at Yasukuni Shrine. people who were internationalists, people who were socialists, people who were anarchists, and the pacifists who died and fighting for the nation were actually excluded from the Yasukuni Shrine. They were Japanese, but not as honored here. And here we use this conceptual discussion of excessive supplements that Derrida was used, and how these deviant memories or other memories disturb and deconstruct the binary politics between dominant versus the other memories. Regarding its universal appeal, we like to point out that not every nation state commemorates and honors their soldiers and past war in the same universal way. And upon seeing and witnessing the Abe's photo, which is rather upright and determined and focused posture, confidently walking through the corridors of the Yasukuni Shrine, we cannot help but remembering equally famous photo of Willy Brandt, especially when he visited the commemoration of the Jewish victims during the Holocaust in Poland. And his vulnerable posture on his knees remind us that it is actually not universal, and there are different ways to remember and commemorate what happened in the past. Thank you very much.
So are there questions for Dr. Lee? Question?
Dr. Lee, Jim Corcoran from the Military Campus Program. In any of your research, have you addressed or assessed how the younger generation, the age group that we have in this room in Japan, how they're responding? And in the beginning, you said you were going to talk about comfort women, Japanese military sexual slaves, comfort women, and also, what was the other thing? Yasukuni, comfort women,
And forced labor.
And forced labor, which, but do you have an idea about how this age generation in Japan, how much they know about this, number one, and how they respond to this?
I think, one of the important, before that, as I was preparing for this presentation, I was thinking about including some visual images just to enhance your, or to present my discussions more vividly and clearly. And I was able to find some photos of the older soldiers wearing their old uniforms and marching and conducting their military rituals and so on and so forth. At the same time, these famous politicians visit there in creating such a scene. But equally, there were many photos of the ordinary Japanese citizens participating in Yasukuni Shrine through its cultural rituals and the spring annual festival and fall annual festival. And sometimes there were photos of children, not only wearing the traditional Japanese, traditional clothes, but some children were wearing military uniforms. I think, on the one hand, we can talk about this strategic and purposeful articulation and reproduction of national narrative and identity, for certain political and strategic purposes. But I think there is an equally important aspect that how this national narrative and identity operates at rather subconscious level. And that's the reason why I was invoking this term called the banality. And I'm sure that you remember this, the original usage of the term came from the Hannah Arendt, and later used by Michael Billig in his discussion of banal nationalism. That how nationalistic discourse is reproduced and exercised at times through the subconscious or even unconscious level without really realizing that we are accepting and internalizing this view on ourselves and the nation and the world. I think it's important to understand that these cultural rituals and ceremonies and religious traditions are so much ingrained within the traditional part, especially the Shintoism part of Japanese culture. At times, we accept it without really thinking or critically examining it. On the one hand, going back to your question, I'm sure there are younger generations who are conscious of their history and their past from a view somewhat similar to Yasukuni Shrine. But my guess is that there are equally many Japanese young generations who do not necessarily agree with this Yasukuni Shrine politics and its view, but believe their participation and joining in Yasukuni Shrine is part of their cultural and rather mundane practice of their cultural tradition. I think that's a very important and strategic and powerful part of Yasukuni rhetoric. So, does it answer your question?
Yeah, well, do you intend in your study to try and find out the views of, young Japanese of the age of this audience,
I think that's a great question. I think that's another step or next step that we can learn more about the general attitudes and the survey through survey about how younger generations' opinions and attitudes might be different from older generations. But it's kind of surprising that when you visit Yasukuni Shrine, you see many younger children and the kids wearing in the traditional costume. And I do not think that they understand or they agree with the politics of Yasukuni Shrine.
It'd be interesting to know what they do understand and believe. Yeah.
If I can add on to that, this question of what the kind of the mass of Japanese people feel about Yasukuni Shrine or about Japan's wartime past, I think this is where Dr. Lee's concept of the silences or the deletions or the selection of history is really important, because of course we do know that what has happened is the Japanese government controls textbooks, educational textbooks, and they have pretty actively exercised their control in making certain that the textbooks, when they talk about Japanese atrocities and the Japanese past in the World War II, are very neutral. The Nanjing Massacre occupies about a paragraph in a textbook. And these have created great controversies within East Asia. But within Japan, if you ask Japanese young people, gee, what happened in the Nanjing Massacre? Look at Nanjing Massacre. It's not a big part of their learning. And I suspect this is probably as common as any attitude among Japanese young people, is that they don't really know much about this time period. So I think that's where this is a very interesting and useful concept of that there's these selections and deletions of the past, which allows the population to really not have strong opinions, probably maybe not even have that strong opinions about Yasukuni Shrine. I mean, I'm not so certain about Yasukuni Shrine. I can tell you that the Japanese population in their historical education is missing a lot. There's a lot of deletions there.
In a way, I mean, one a positive aspect of this history debate and also history reform movement, and particularly led by the right-wing conservative politicians, often come out with this history debate and also rewriting of history textbooks, and especially by this foundation called the New History Book Foundation, trying to rewrite history. But actually, if you look at the rate of adaptation, it's extremely low. So a lot of high school teachers, history teachers, actually refuse to adopt this right-wing conservative textbook and believe in other versions.
Right, but even the other, well, I guess my point is that even the mainstream versions have really minimized the role of the Nanjing Massacre, the role of the Sino-Japanese War. The right-wing stuff, no one really, none of the mainstream folks really pay much attention to that. By the way, I visited Yasukuni Shrine back in 1994, I think it was, 93. And I signed my name and put my address under guest register. I got books for about a decade after that. I got these books that Dr. Lee is referring to, these books that rewrite the past. They talk about there was no Nanjing massacre, and it was just a triumphal war for the Japanese. And literally, they're rewriting everything. And I kept getting these books. It was very embarrassing. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
I think there's a in-between generation. It's not just the older people who are, let's say, in favor of Yasukuni Shrine, and the younger people who don't know that much about the war. There's a generation that would be about my age that was born after the war and feels that Japan did bad things during the war, and that the Yasukuni Shrine is sort of an embarrassment. And yeah, they exist. You know?
Right, absolutely. I mean, it's I mean, we should not mistake that when we follow this civil rights movement, especially on comfort woman issue and forced labor issue and Yasukuni Shrine issue, there are equally many Japanese NGOs that fight against these politics and also fight with other international